So welcome to my YouTube channel. That's what we call The Good Life. Today I'm going to be talking about all the jobs you can be doing in the month of May. Now it's really starting to get sunnier, the days are getting longer, you know, it's so much more you can be doing with the better weather that we're getting at the moment. But don't be too deceived, because you can still get some frost and some really quite cold weather. That being said, there's still lots of things you can do without worrying too much, and I'm going to be telling you some things that you can do to protect yourself so that you don't lose some of your precious crops. Now I want to say a massive thank you to all my new subscribers, and in particular the ones that have bought me a coffee recently. If you think you're getting value from this video, you can do something called Buy Me a Coffee. There will be a link up on the screen and also one in the description. Now let's move on to some of the excellent jobs you can be doing. Now you can be direct sowing into the ground at the moment, and that's exactly what I've been doing today. I've put some carrots in, I've put some chard in, and I'm just about to put some beetroot in as well. So let's get my beetroot out. So I've got two varieties here, Detroit and also something called a Golden Eye. Bolt Hard is also another really good variety that I plant quite a lot, but today I'm giving these a go. Now I've obviously dug over the ground, I've hoed it, I've taken out any stones. Something I do before I plant is I just water just before I'm going to put the seeds in. So I've already watered along here just so the seeds go into some already quite moist soil. I just find that I get better germination when I do it. And it has been particularly dry here in Kent. I don't know what it's like where everyone else is in the country, or in the world for that matter, but it has been exceptionally dry compared to last year where it rained and rained and rained. It's been really dry here, but the good news is we haven't had so many slugs or snails as a result of that. So you just gently sprinkle them in. Obviously I've made a small indentation with a trowel. So obviously I hoed it over, I did a small indentation with a trowel, then I watered it, and now I'm just sprinkling the seeds in. I've got to say, I'm not one of these people who sprinkles their seeds very thinly. I do put them in quite generously, but each to their own. I do just gently sprinkle, obviously not in great big clumps, so I do sprinkle them, but I don't worry too much if they're a little bit clumped together, because you find that they don't all germinate anyway, and you can always thin them out if necessary. Now I think, even though I intended to do 2 packets, I think I might just end up just doing this row, because there is quite a lot of seed here. I don't know about anyone else, I end up having lots of half packets of everything if I open up too many packets, so I can always do another row, which leads me on quite neatly. But it's a really good idea to successional sow, because it means that you get a constant crop of things when you run out. So that's another good thing to do. Things like beetroot, you can successional sow, carrots, lettuce, radishes, in particular salad, which really do need to be successional sowed because they bulk quite easily. And then just get a trowel and then just gently edge it over. Now you don't bury these seeds down very deep because they're quite tiny, so just a tiny amount of soil on the top. And if you see any large clumps, break them up. And if you see any stones, take them out. So we just go along to the end of the row with the trowel like that. And I will finish this bit later. But one thing I will say is then when you water any fine seeds, make sure you do it with a rose on. So otherwise the seeds could just splurge everywhere. So mine's not particularly good, it's a little bit split and I need a new one, but it's a much better way, and I really do soak them when I do it as well. So something else that I do when I put seeds in is I put some netting over. Things like the beetroot and the chard, I put the scaffolding net over, which I will show you when we get further up the plot what I mean. But my carrots, I always use something called Enviromesh. And the reason I use Enviromesh is because you get the carrot fly, and it really can decimate your crop. And ever since I've used Enviromesh on my carrots, it's made such a big amount of difference. So I will put a link up on the screen if you want to get one of these Enviromesh tunnels, and one in the description if you'd like to get one of those. So it's really important to protect lots of things from the birds, and this is the netting I'm going to be putting over my beetroots and my chard. These are already over some other seeds that I started off recently. I've got some radish leaf, some actual radishes, some mustard leaf. I put some rocket in there, I've got salad, I've got coriander, and I've also got parsley. But I know that if I don't cover them with something, it's likely that the birds will get them. Same with my gooseberries over there. As soon as the gooseberries start to fall, and my strawberries back at home, and the brassicas that I've got in there, I need to keep them covered because the birds will definitely have a go at them. Now, if you'd like to get some of this scaffolding netting, I will put a link up on the screen and one in the description. I have to tell you, I do make a little bit of money out of it, only a little bit, but it's there if you want it. So the other thing is, if you put anything out that is a little bit tender and it gets a little bit cold, because it's been really warm and it's hard to imagine it's going to get cold. But this time last year I was in my corduroys and my fleecy leggings still, because I looked back on my videos, whereas this year it's absolutely baking. I have actually braved it and put 3 courgettes out, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on the night temperatures. If it drops down too long, I'm going to have to pop a little bit of fleece over them. But at the moment our night temperatures are really high, and I have hardened them off, which does lead me on to hardening them off. So if this gets too cold, I will pop a little bit of fleece over them. Now we'll put a link up on the screen and one in the description if you think you might need some fleece. Now, believe it or not, there are already some things you can be harvesting. In the month of May, quite often your baby artichokes will come on. There's asparagus. I picked my first piece of asparagus, like 1 stick, but I've still got 1 piece. Plenty of rhubarb. There's also some chard. I've still got chard. The lettuce leaves are nearly coming through. So this month you might even see the odd courgette. You know, there really are quite a few things. I've still got spring onions back at home that I'm harvesting. So there are quite a few things out there that you could be harvesting, which does lead me on to the rhubarb. I've got some fantastic rhubarb here, which I am going to harvest. But there's a few people that get in some blooms coming up through their rhubarb, and that's going to seed. Now, there's a distinct difference between when you pull your rhubarb to eat it and if you get the bloom. So when you're pulling your rhubarb to pick it, you take it right out from the bottom and you literally just yank it out like that. If you've got the bloom coming out through, you just get a pair of scissors and you go right down to the bottom and you snip it out. The reason you want to snip it out is because you don't want the energy going into that bloom. You want the energy going into your plant. It can be for a couple of reasons, but for one reason or another, your plant is probably distressed. My best recommendation is to water a bit more and give it a feed. And hopefully you might still get some rhubarb this year and see what happens. But yeah, I've had it. I haven't got it this year at the moment. It's quite a sheltered position that mine's in, so I don't get it very often. So I think maybe that keeps it a little bit more moist. But I've had the odd flower come through on my rhubarb and I've had to remove it. So it happens to all of us. So I'm in my fruit area, and as you can see, it's a little bit overgrown. I've been doing quite a lot of weeding today, not in this area, but in other parts of my plot. But this part of my allotment, I either mow or trim it, because it just gets too overgrown and I couldn't possibly pull all the weeds out. One of the best investments we made last year is we bought a Ryobi electric strimmer, and it's been absolutely fantastic. It's an absolute game changer compared to the petrol one that we had before, which was a complete nightmare. So if you'd like to get one of those strimmers to help you on your plot, there will be a link up on the screen and there will also be one in the description. So the other job you can be doing is earthing up your potatoes. My first earlies, Aaron Pilot, have just started to peep through, so I can earth them up now or I can wait another week or so, but now is the time to start earthing your potatoes up if they're starting to peep through the soil. We're going to be heading back home to look in the greenhouse at the moment, but before I do, a lot of people ask me what books I recommend. The Allotment Month by Month by Alan Buckingham is absolutely a fantastic book. It gives you everything you need to know, and I use this book myself quite a lot, so there will be a link up on the screen and one in the description. Now let's head back home and check out my greenhouse. Now it's a hive of activity back at home. Hardening off is a really important thing to do. If you don't know what it is, basically it's acclimatising your plants to the outside. So I've got some plants here that are actually, some of them aren't that frost sensitive like the leeks and the onions, but things like my courgettes, my peppers and my brassicas have been in my greenhouse, but over the last week or so I've just started putting them outside, and if I think it's going to be cold in the evening, then I'm popping them back into the greenhouse again. If I think it's going to be okay, like tonight, night temperatures are not dropping down at all, I'm just going to leave them here. So I am keeping a check on the web, but it's worth having the Met Office app on your phone if you haven't got it. So hardening off is really important, because if you put them out and they've not been hardened off, if you get the slightest little bit of cold weather, they could perish, and also they're more susceptible to pests as well. When you harden them off, it does generally harden them up for the weather and for the pests as well. So that's a really, really important thing to do. So let's move into the greenhouse and take a look at what we've got in there. Now, I've been soaking some French beans, which I don't know if anyone's seen me do. If you're a regular watcher of me, you know that I soak all my peas, beans and sweet corn. I soak it overnight in some water, I drain them, and then I put them between some damp tissue, and when they've germinated, I then either plop them straight into the ground, or I put them into module trays like I've got here. So I've filled up a module tray with some compost. I do a mix of core and multi-purpose because I find that's been the most effective. And then all I do is just pop them straight in, just with a... You can either use the end of like a knife or something, or I've got one of these really handy tools. I do about 2 per tray, and then I just cover them up like that. So really, really simple. I have been brave enough to direct sow some straight into the allotment. Whether or not they'll be okay or not, that's why I'm doing this. And that leads me on to another thing. When you start putting stuff out, when you've been hardening stuff off and you've got something that's a little bit delicate, like your courgettes, like your brassicas, like your peppers, like lots of different things, don't put them all out in one go, because if you lose them, you'll lose the lot. Whereas if you put them out gradually, you are kind of just edging your bets on what you're doing. The other thing which I wanted to talk to you about is something called, I hear a lot of people saying that their plants are dying off and they don't know why. Now, there's often 2 reasons why your seedlings in particular die off, and it's something called damping off. Now, one of them can be because they're being watered too much, and the other thing can be that they're not getting enough proper light. So again, another good reason, especially if you haven't got a greenhouse and your plants are in your house, is on a nice warm day to get your plants outside in some lovely sunlight. Now, people often don't know how much to water. Now, if it's already wet like that is, I wouldn't water it again, otherwise I'd risk damping off. When they start to feel a little bit dry, like those are, in fact I probably could have done with watering that this morning, then you just give them a water like that. So just feel them. If they feel really quite dry or almost dry, just give them a water. So don't let them get really, really dry, but don't keep watering and water them every single day when they're already moist like they are. And those will really, really make a massive difference in your seedlings surviving. And I've got one over there. So another job I've been doing is I've been potting on. So I've got my little plants there, which as they've started to get root bound, I've started potting on into bigger pots because I'm not quite ready to put them out in my allotment yet. Now, if you're wondering what else you can be sowing and planting this time of year, there is a link up on the screen for my what to sow video in May.